that we will be introducing to you as well today. Um, and her name is Kim Russell. We'll be doing a full introduction and get everybody acclimated. So I see a lot of familiar faces. Welcome, everybody. We're happy to see you. And we've been receiving hats. Thank you, everybody, for sending in hats. So we will, Kez, it looks like you've got everything all set up, and I see all the messages coming through that we're good. Do we have everybody in from the waiting room?
All right. I think so. I think we do.
Right. I'm hoping we've got everybody. All right. So we have a little presentation to share with you today, like we usually do, to sort of set the stage. And then we're going to introduce Kim Russell. She is with the Women's March. So we're super excited to have her here today. We'll do a little interview with her, and then we'll do some questions and answers. If you have any burning questions that are on your mind and you'd like to put something into the Q&A, Kesley's going to be checking the Q&A as we go along today. So I have some specific pre-prepared questions that we will be asking her, so we don't, so that we know exactly what's happening. But we're also happy to take any questions anybody has. So put that into your Q&A. And we'll be watching the chat as much as possible, but it can get a little confusing over there. All right. So, Kesley, do you want to get started with the presentation?
Yes, I would love to. Let me just make sure I get it in the right format for everybody. Let's see. All right. I don't have to get it big. Let me just stop one thing. Hold on, give me 1 second. Of course. Always.
I know.
Right,
and as Kesley's getting this ready, we see her, all of the hats that she's been working on. I love how many different designs we're seeing from the Stars and Stripes. She's got the Brat Summer up here as well. And then she's got one of the knitted with the white and the red border. But I have seen some really creative combinations of folks who get to the end of their yarn and they're using up their scrap yarn. So we get some cool little stripes that happen. I love how everybody's getting creative and doing something a little different. All right,
well, welcome.
That looks good.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just to kind of recap for anybody who's new, we wanted to just touch on the hats that we've created, the patriotic hat with stars and stripes. Joy and I were traveling and just really felt, had lots of conversations about the current climate, and wanted to create something that had a patriotic flair to it, with a kickback to the pussy hat style hats that we made in 2017. So we kind of got our creative juices, our sister wheels turning, and created the patriotic hat that we've all been knitting and crocheting and seeing all the variations of it, as Joy mentioned, which is great because this style of hat is really so open to interpretation and changing it and modifying it. So it makes sense for you and what you want to have. But we had a little plot twist along the way. We were initially supporting Hats for Harris, and we're still obviously supporting our campaigns across the country that are focused on women's rights and focused on all the important issues that we're all here for. And we have gotten the thumbs up for the Women's March to have a table in their tent. And we've changed our name a little bit to align better with the long-term goals of what Joy and I had in mind when we started this, but really didn't know how to take it to that next step. So this is a great new chapter, a new plot twist, if you will, to adjust our name from Hats for Harris to One Stitch, One Voice. And this is super exciting because we're still supporting the political campaigns across the country that align with everybody's goals. as well as allow us to go beyond one particular campaign or one particular candidate and allow us to use our collective voices for the collective good, the better good. So we've combined, not combined, we've partnered, got the support of the Women's March, and we will have a table at the November 2nd Women's March, where all the hats that people have been sending in, we will hand those out to attendees at the Women's March so we can all wear our hats to the Women's March, as well as hand out hats to attendees. And we'll talk a little bit about more what that vision looks like and how that vision will come into play for all of us as we go on tonight's presentation. But we are really so, Joy and I are so thrilled and so excited to have a seat at the table, if you will. And Joy, I'm going to pass it over to you and Kim, and let me stop sharing so we can get that introduction in. Sorry, let me get my screen back big. All right, here we go. Of course.
Okay. And so we have Kim Russell here. She is the creative director at the Women's March. She joined the Women's March in her actions, demanding actions for common sense with gun violence. She is a survivor of gun violence, and that's what brought her to the Women's March. She has been there since 2016, and she has been working in intersecting issues that impact women and families. She currently serves as the creative director and inspired the youth to lead Enough, the national school walkouts that saw 1.6 million students walk out of schools demanding safety for gun violence. So she is originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and lives in Brooklyn, New York right now. And she will be at the Women's March in the tent with us. So Kim, I'll hand it over to you if you would like to add anything to that introduction.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's really so great to see everybody's hands moving. I see you all knitting. Being the only creative on staff at Women's March, I'm often on these Zoom calls, and I'm the one who's doing stuff like this and not looking. And it's so nice to kind of see what everybody else sees when I'm on a Zoom. But yeah, I actually started Women's March in 2017. I did not work there for the very first march. I was still working with a gun violence prevention group for the very first march, but I had volunteered and did lead a contingent of people to go to that first march. And I did knit a hat that I was wearing and knit one for a friend, and I was there. And then, it was like, after who got elected, I thought, oh my gosh, gun violence is going to be, chopped liver again. And I should work somewhere where these issues intersect. And that's what led me to Women's March. And I was trying to really push for gun violence prevention through Women's March. And then, of course, we just got hit with reproductive rights. So I've kind of, I've sort of have been working all fronts. But yeah, so I'm kind of exhausted, but at the same time, very happy to be here and happy to see all of you.
Good. Okay, so I have a couple of questions to ask you. First of all, I'd love to know how did you get involved with the Women's March? I like the way that you started after the Women's March, but
right.
What actually got you there? How did you?
It's kind of a funny story. It was, I saw it on Facebook, like most people after the election, and I had sort of accidentally helped start Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. After the Sandy Hook school shootings. I am trained as a graphic designer. I had been a stay-at-home mom, just kind of doing odd jobs here and there, freelancing, but really not working. And then when Sandy Hook happened, my daughter was in a first grade classroom, and it just really hit me hard. And I thought, I've got to do something. And I got on Facebook and um, met Shannon Watts on Facebook, and she was like, "Can you help?" I was like, "Sure." And then I was on MSNBC in a few days, and then it just took off and it exploded. And it was a really intense time, especially having zero background in organizing or activism. It just took off like a shot. And so when I saw the same thing kind of happening to Women's March, I noticed that one of the organizers lived in Brooklyn, very close to me. And so I just reached out to her. I DM'd her on Facebook. She didn't know me at all. And I was like, "Look, you are in for a ride. And if you want to talk, I'm around." And so I just kind of met up with her and started volunteering. And then organized a group of women to go, and I took my daughter, and then just developed relationships. And I just thought, I could see they were all just so overwhelmed and so busy, but I could see so much potential. And after the march, I was like, I got to get on this plane. I don't know what seat, but I'm just going to get on the plane. And it felt like we were building it and flying it at the same time. But that's how I got in. And I started doing everything. I started just as helping people out, doing whatever. At one point, I was even writing checks, which if you knew me, you wouldn't trust me to pay people. But we had to do what we had to do. And then eventually I was like, y'all do know I'm a graphic designer, right? And so it took a while, but finally, my skills and my passions have merged, and I landed here, and it's a great fit.
I love that. I love that story. And I like that your starting point was just like, I need to do something. And I feel
Yeah,
like that's what we've all been sharing
right.
since August is we need to do something. So the great message to all of us is by showing up, turning out, reaching out to people you don't know and just saying, I'm here, I have something to offer, can I
Hmm.
help? It makes a big difference. So that's
Yeah.
really cool because that's kind of how we all came together. All right. So my next question for you is we are marching on November 2nd, and we're super excited to be joining that. Can you tell us a little bit about the planning of the event and why the march is planned for when it is? And why should people attend and gather at Freedom Plaza? And what will their experience be?
Great. So November 2nd, we went back and forth with the date, and it was tough to land on it, but eventually we did. And um, typically when we host our marches in DC, we start them in the mornings. We usually start around 10 a.m. And then we're usually done a few hours later. For this one, we intentionally started it at 3 p.m. We want to make sure that if people want to get out and canvass, if they have other ways that they want to get out the vote, that they have time to do that in the morning, and then they can come and meet up with us in the afternoon. But this is our get out the vote. This is our effort of building momentum. And, that very first march, we were marching after the election. This time we're marching before the election. And we really want to build that momentum and just get everybody to the polls. And, that very first march was very much about resistance. It was about fighting. And this march, we want there to be joy. We want, Kamala is full of laughter and joy, and we want to take that to the polls. And we want people we almost want it to feel like a pep rally, like a celebration. Like, we are here, we've gotten this far, we're going to do this and get there. And this is our way of, just really uplifting everyone's efforts to get us here and to get us over the finish line. And we can do it. So we're excited. Marches really activate people. They get people excited. They get a lot of press. And, we're hoping that, if people see us, if they're sitting at home, they see us, they're like, I think I will get out and vote. If these women can be out in the streets, I'm going to go and vote. So that's why we're doing it on the 2nd. It's exciting.
I love that. Okay, so there we go. And Freedom Plaza is where we're going to be gathering, and there's a little gathering time there before the march actually
Yes.
starts. So
So
that'll be
yeah.
good.
So 3 p.m., we're going to gather at Freedom Plaza. We'll have some music playing. We will also have this sort of community area with tables and some tents. You guys will have a table. There will also be, a women's march area, and then some of our other partners will have tents. I mean, not tents, tables. So, because we really want people to just be in community with one another and talk and get to know each other. So that'll happen from 3 to 4. And at 4, we will start our rally, our program. And then at 5, we will march. And it's not a super long march. It's I don't know, it's maybe half a mile, so it's not too long. And then we're gonna land in front of the White House. And because that's where we're going. We're marching to the White House.
That's where we should be. Exactly.
That is where we're
Perfect.
going.
All right, so I'm going to change gears a little bit from the actual march and ask you a couple questions about because you have that art background, that graphic design background, and because we're all making hats, knitting, crocheting, making by hand, we kind of wanted to know a little bit about your perspective on the role of handmade crafts in political activism. And obviously particularly around the pussy hat and now the patriotic hat, and like how women's or how handmade arts have affected the political activism.
Well, I mean, I want to do much more research into this, but you know, women arts and crafts and political activism go hand in hand way back. I mean, think of the suffragettes, and the beautiful banners that they would sew and make, and they would wear all white, and they knew, being a spectacle got attention, and it worked. They knew how to make slogans. Women are clever like this. We've been doing it for a long time. And then, fast forward to the 80s and 90s, and you get the Guerrilla Girls, who are also brilliant. And then I remember going to parties that were billionaires for Bush. There's so many incredible creative ways that women and men have always participated in political movements. And I don't know if any of you ever get to Brooklyn, but the Brooklyn Museum actually has an incredible permanent exhibition of women and activism. And, the Judy Chicago table is there, and it's just really incredible. So there is a long history, and I think it's incredible to see that continues to happen. And when I started working at Women's March, I learned about the origin of the very first pussy hat for 2017. And I'm not sure if everyone knows that story, but it was not created by Women's March. It was just a regular person like all of us. She lives in California. Her name is Kristen Suh, and she created these pussy hats, and it was in response to Donald Trump's, grotesque statement about grabbing a woman by the pussy and blah, blah, blah. And so she was like, nah. And so she designed this hat that was in the shape of pussycat ears, and she made it pink. So this spread, and she came up with a plan that she wanted, because she couldn't get to DC, she wanted to knit a hat for someone else to wear that was going to DC, and that would represent her as well as the person who was wearing it. So actually, every photograph you see of Washington, DC, of someone wearing a pink hat represents 2 people, not 1. So 1.2 million people were at that first march. That means all of those hats. that's
Yeah.
twice as many people. So I just thought that was really beautiful, because I'm sure there were a lot of women who wanted to go and weren't able to go. And then I remember being in DC and meeting a woman who was wearing a hat that had been gifted to her and came with a note. And she still has that note today, 8 years later. It meant so much to her. So it was just that sense of community, but also the spectacle. I mean, you just can't buy that sea of hats that we saw. But then, of course, later I realized that the pink pussy hats didn't make everyone feel included. So not all women have pink ones, and not all women have them at all. So we started to realize, okay, maybe these hats, as incredible as they seem, maybe they don't fit everyone. So I started making graphics of the shape, the cat-eared hat shape, because the shape, I think, really speaks to our feminist movement. I think it's just a great symbol. And graphically, it's a good symbol. So I started making blue ones and green ones and black ones and trans flag striped ones and LGBTQ rainbow striped ones. And so I started making them in every color. And that seemed to kind of solve the issues that people were having, because in that way, it becomes more about the shape and less about, it being too literal. So when I found out about you guys and saw that you had added this flag element to it, I was like, well, that's just perfect. That's all of it wrapped up into one. We've maintained the shape that immediately you know what it is when you see that shape. And now you've added our flag, which I feel like has been co-opted from us, and everyone forgets that. I think one of your friends said it best: feminism is patriotic. And it's just, it's our flag too. And I just love how you've married these two things, and it's really perfect. So I'm really excited to see these hats all over the place, and I can't wait for people to get them.
Yeah, we definitely can't wait for that too. We are so excited, and as we get to open all those boxes and see all those pretty hats. So it's good to hear. It's interesting to hear how, we were all thinking along the same thread of how important it is to keep the shape of the hat, because it makes that statement of empowerment, and we stand for things, and then also reclaiming. So I love that. We have a couple more questions. One we wanted to know for a number of the folks that we have here, and Kim, you kind of touched on it when you said that when people knit or crochet a hat and give it, it represents two people. What should the folks do who can't attend the march? We have many people who are sending in tons of hats, but they won't be attending the march in Washington, D.C. How can they find out about events happening around them?
So we do have sister marches popping up. I think we have 180 at the moment and still growing. So these are marches that everyday women like you just decide, okay, we need a march in my town. And you sign up and you put it on the map, and then people show up. I'm so sorry, my dog is barking. I can't. Hold on, let me grab.
Yeah, Kim's dog's adorable. Just to touch on all the hats that we have received, they are coming in with notes, and it's so amazing to open the packages and for people to see what's
You're
coming
fine.
in. So thanks everybody.
Yeah, so we will have marches across the country. And if you go to wewon'tgoback.com, then you'll be able to see the map. It's also on womensmarch.com, and you can put in your zip code and see if there's one near you. And if there's not, it's not too late to host one. You can sign up. We are vetting applicants as fast as we can, so it's not too late. And when you sign up to host a march, we will give you our toolkit. We will host calls. We'll make sure you have all the tools that you need to host a march. And, you know, some of the marches, sometimes it's just 5 people meeting at a street corner, you know, if it's in a small town. And I think the important thing is just for people to get together. You know, we have, I remember that the very first march, there was even one in Antarctica that had like 20 people. So it was, but it really, it's just great to have that community. So some marches are small, some will be big. The one in DC will be big. But yeah, you should hopefully be able to find one not too far from you. If not, you can always host one. And if not, just send a hat and have someone wear it and represent you wherever they are.
I love that. How large do you anticipate the march to be in Washington, D.C.?
You know, I think it's so tough to say. We have no idea. I mean, since that very first one, I think our largest march has been, I guess we had one that was probably about 50,000, but I think this march might be 15 to 20,000. It's really hard to say. I don't know. And it could be 8 or it could be 40. You just never know until you get there. So I try not to set any expectations, um, but you know, it really is just, it doesn't even matter. It's just how you feel when you're there. It's just such a great feeling to be there. And I get excited. I mean, I've been to so many marches at this point, I can't even count them, but I still get so excited to go. I love to march. It's great.
Yes. I think we are all pumped. All right. And then one of our other questions, I'm full of questions for you,
It's
Kim.
fine.
I think one of the things that we're really excited about, and Kesley and I have talked about with the group, and sort of why the one stitch, one voice is really important, because we anticipate, you know, we're on the side of, we anticipate a win, and then we anticipate an inauguration, and then we anticipate future things, which is why one stitch, one voice really works out well.
Mhm.
What are some of the things, and if you can't share, or if you can share, whatever you can share, sort of some of the things that are more future thinking after the first women's march, or not the first, but this women's march on November 2nd? Like, what are
Sure.
some of the other things that might be happening?
Well, we'll definitely be back in January. We typically always march in January because that's sort of our anniversary. So even if there's no inauguration, we march in January, except for, I think it was 2021. There was one year during COVID when we didn't. So we're definitely going to be out in January. I think it's the day after inauguration. So that is happening. And at the November 2nd march, we will be getting people to pledge to march on that date. That'll also be another big march. And we don't know what that's going to be. We have no idea. We don't know if we're going to be celebrating. We don't know if we're going to be resisting. We really don't know what it's going to be, but whatever it is, we're going to be there. So it's been, this has been an extra tough one to organize because we're organizing for November 2nd and January at the same time. So, and we're also sort of like, okay, so what if she wins, but we lose the Senate? Or what if she, you know, we've just been trying to play out all these different scenarios, and it's just impossible. We're just not going to know. And I think one thing we're also trying to really prepare ourselves for is that, you know, we may not know right away how this goes. So we really want to make sure that people are kind of braced for that. I think it's unusual in any country to get election results the same night of the election. The fact that we've had that in the past is kind of not typical. So I hope people are sort of, just getting ready that we're not going to know that night. And we just need to, I think everybody should keep themselves well stocked in yarn and just keep knitting because you're going to maybe
I
need
think
an
that's
outlet.
yeah, I think that's the key message is it's not just about November 2nd, it's about after November 2nd, whatever the results are.
Mhm.
Because if, we will have another March that we will be able to do, and we need to keep making hats, and we'll need hats for that March.
Mhm.
So yeah, everybody who's invested in making hats, there's there's time to make more, there's time to continue to, because we need them.
Yeah, yeah. And if everything goes our way and everything's smooth sailing and we win and it's incredible, we're still going to need hats because we're still going to march and we're going to celebrate. So it no matter what happens, we're going to be in the streets. So um yeah, I'm anxious, excited, nervous. It's like a roller coaster ride right now.
Exactly. Exactly. I think we're all thinking that way. All right. Well, those are the questions that I had for you, Kim. Did you have anything that you wanted to tell the group that maybe I didn't ask you about?
No, just thank you. I mean, just thank you so much. It's just so wonderful. I think that I think someone said something recently that really resonated with me. Just talking about how, there's so many different things that people can be doing right now in this time. Some people are sending postcards, some people are, volunteering at the polls, some people are canvassing, and some people are marching, and some people are knitting, and some people are making signs. And the thing that it's important for us all to remember is that we can't do everything, but we can all do something. And so the fact that we're all doing something is should make us all feel really good. So it's great. And I
Definitely.
think doing it in community is also really inspiring and I don't know, it gives me hope.
Yes. Yes, and it's funny because each time we have this meeting afterwards, I don't know how everybody else feels, but Kesley and I will call each other and we'll be like, I just feel so energized after this
Mhm.
meeting. We just feel so good. And every morning when I look at Facebook and our Ravelry groups and I see everybody's comments and everything that they've made, I feel like we do have a lot of hope and a lot of, and I, it's my name, so I use it carefully, but I do feel like we have a lot of joy that we're
Mhm.
bringing to each other, and the energy that we've been able to generate here has been phenomenal. And I did kind of skip over, but I didn't mean to skip over, but I did skip over. Um, we have a member in our group named Shelly, and she made a comment in our Facebook group that I think has resonated with Kesley and myself. And then we shared that with Kim as well. And Kim, when you heard that one, when I think the key part of her post that really hit us all was that feminism is patriotic.
Mhm.
And I didn't have you react to that, and that was one of our questions. Do you want to talk about that just a little bit, and we'll kind of bring back to the stars and stripes theme of the patriotic hat?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just really kind of says it all, right? I mean, that's just sort of the perfect statement for this movement and this project that you're doing. And it marries all of it. But like I was saying earlier, we often feel like um, people who, don't share our views have taken the flag, and have adopted it. And it's just, it's almost become, for some progressives, it's almost embarrassing because the other side uses it so much to their advantage. And it just feels like It's become something that is not for everybody, but it is. And it's our country, it's our futures, it's our families, it's ours too. It's also our flag. So to see this hat and to see the flag with that is just perfect, because it's also our flag. And we are
Yeah.
patriotic, and being a feminist is patriotic. Supporting women's rights is patriotic. So I hope that people are reminded of that when they see these hats.
Yes. And I want to correct myself. The person who put that quote in, her name is Elizabeth. So I want to make that, get the name
It's a
right.
very good
Gotta-
one, and I might ask her if I can maybe steal it for a sign. It's a
It's
good one.
perfect. I love
It's
it.
so great.
Yeah.
Oh, Joyce froze
Great.
there for a
Well, I
minute.
think we're at a point where we wanted to open up to the group. Oh, did we freeze?
Nope, you're good.
Are we good? Okay. So I wanted to take a minute and open up to the group. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask him, or Kesley and myself, or just anything that you want to share, there's always a good story that somebody has about what's happened this week and what they experienced. So we'll just kind of open it up to everybody for some sharing time.
And I'd like to kind of touch on something, Kim, that you talked about, which we haven't talked about, but Mom's Demand, which I feel you where it's like, I just don't know how many marches I've participated in. In Northern Virginia, NRA has their headquarters here, and I was actually fortunate to participate in the march from NRA to DOJ.
I was there.
Yeah, it was a rainy day. But that was an amazing opportunity, amazing march. And I was recently at a street festival in Clarendon, Virginia, and this guy was at the Mom's Demand tent, and he was being super aggressive with the women there, the people there. And I was so impressed. One of the women wearing a Mom's Demand shirt really de-escalated the situation. And I think that like we are all, I mean, I know I'm knitting hats to take to the Women's March and to share at the Women's March, but I've seen a lot of people comment that their intent is to wear the hat voting, to wear their hat at the grocery store, like just to wear it everywhere. And I think it's an opportunity to talk about our freedom, to talk about women's rights to people who, might say like, oh, I like that hat. So how, do you have any like 3 tips on, something how people can respond when they get a compliment on their handmade hat?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's one great thing about these hats, and I do hope people wear them to the polls if you feel comfortable. I know some people might not feel comfortable depending on where you are, but if you do, yes, I think it's a great conversation starter. And you may get asked, tell me about your hat, and then I think it's one line, right? Feminism is patriotic. And there you go. I mean, that's kind of perfect. But it is a great way to start a conversation. And we were running a program called Knock Your Block, where we were hoping women would go and just knock on their neighbors' doors and have conversations. Because when you speak to your neighbors, people people you trust, people who aren't strangers knocking on your door, and you just have a conversation with them, you're going to make more impact than, someone calling on the phone or texting or whatever. So neighbor to neighbor. It's also a program we were doing in partnership with Indivisible. But when neighbors speak to neighbors, you have a more meaningful conversation. You already know one another. And wearing that hat is a great icebreaker to do that. So yes, please wear them to the polls and vote early. Wear it voting early, Oh, I'm looking at this title in the chat. Let's Move the Needle, an activism handbook for artists, crafters, creatives, and makers. That's awesome. That is such a great book title. Yeah, I haven't seen any knitted hats on the other side. I haven't seen a craft movement on the other side. I've seen a lot of printed hats, but no handmade hats.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
handmade hats are just so unique and different for both occasions, 2017 and again now. And when we talk about, somebody was asking if we were going to have plans for the inauguration. I just, I hope everything goes the way that we all are hoping that it goes. And I think it's so amazing to think about Kamala Harris looking out the White House window, out the White House balcony, and just seeing a sea of Americans supporting her. And in a way, like we have to support our president. We have to support the office of the presidency. That's the American way. So either way, I hope it's a
and y'all
more
could
joyous and
send
positive.
these. I mean, I know a lot of politicians, it's kind of tricky for them to accept gifts. But if they're not running for an election, maybe your Congress people, maybe it's easier for them. But maybe after the election, you could mail them to your local Congress people. And then maybe they could wear them on Inauguration Day.
That'd be
That's
so
a
awesome.
great
I
idea.
mean, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I know accepting gifts, there's something about it. They may have to do something special, like get a receipt or something. I'm not sure how it all works, but if you send it to them, they might wear it. Because I remember seeing pink pussy hats at the inauguration. Do you remember? There were certain members of Congress that were wearing them that day. So
Yes.
no matter which way it goes, if we have those hats, they can be there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I love it. I love this. So Jenny is working to support her Kamala Harris Walls office in North Carolina. And I just want to let everybody know that I love your message, Jenny, that while you'll be here with us in heart and spirit. But she feels like it's important to be in North Carolina, and I totally commend that. And
Yes.
I understand that. Like, that is amazing. Everybody's doing, every little bit that they can, whether it's postcarding, making hats. Like, I have crazy signs in my front yard, and I posted a TikTok about it today. And the comments, honestly, out of 100,000 views, I've only had 3 negative comments.
You got 100,000 views on TikTok?
Well, first of
I
all,
know,
yes,
right?
let's take a moment there.
I'm impressed. That's awesome.
If anybody has TikTok, because you should put the link. She has been making these yard signs that will make you think like south of the border as you're driving from the north to the south, and you see all the stop at the south of the border signs. Her yard is full of these
That's awesome.
signs, and it's amazing.
I love it.
Absolutely
I love it.
amazing.
Yeah, like today we had a
Oh,
block
sorry.
party, and I was making buttons with kids, and of course I had some of my buttons. We had block party buttons, but then we also had a stash of women's rights buttons, and the kids loved it. They were like, "Oh, I want this one." And so, like you said, we do what we can, and it's
So let me
great.
see. I can share my TikTok if you guys
Yeah.
want to see it.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God, this is amazing. You're going to be a tourist attraction. I want to come and get photographed in your yard. People are going to, do people pull over for selfies?
Yeah, we have people have pulled over and they've parked their car and they've, walked around. The camel one, the Harris Walls one, my neighbor had like a Madam President pink Barbie sign. And she was loving our signs. I was like, yeah, our yard's getting too short. And she's like, you can put one in my front yard, because Holden, her 5-year-old or 6-year-old, wouldn't let her put the Barbie sign out front. He's like, no, I don't really want the Barbie sign with the bus or anything. I was like, oh, I have the sign for Holden. So we put that one in their front yard for their 5-year-old son. And then then their little 3-year-old daughter is like, well, that one's mine. The other sign is mine.
That is awesome. That is so great.
We've had so much fun. And the cattail, wagging is just south of the border. That was all I was.
That's great.
That was our favorite thing. That's
Okay, so we got-
amazing.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so we have,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Margie had her 15 minutes of fame when she was at the Women's March in 2017. She was walking and knitting, and people, I think that's a great idea. If you can walk and knit at the same time, go for it. Or if you can walk and crochet at the same time, even better. You're doing something that is really a good visual, like she's saying, for the media. So that's a great idea.
It helps to use circular needles.
Right.
I'm gonna pop Donna
Yeah.
in. I'm gonna pop Donna in because she would like to share something. So Donna, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, I've got you on the screen.
It's good being with you tonight. I just wanted to talk a little bit. You were saying about how long people have been doing this. The International Quilt Museum, like 5 years ago, had a huge display in Lincoln, Nebraska, of partisan pieces, it was called. And they have dozens of quilts that have been made back to 1864 for the same kind of thing, stitch by stitch, stitch by stitch. And we've been doing stitch by stitch for a really long time. I also want to add, please send everything that you can to your Congress people. I don't care if they're local. I brought mine to the library and handed it to my local representative for Pennsylvania State. She won her race by 6 votes. 6 votes. The Pennsylvania State House went by 6 votes. She won. 1 more Democrat than Republicans in our state house. 6 votes she won by. So I made her a hat and gave it to her at the library.
Amazing.
So people could see it. And I'm making one for the library bear because the librarian asked me to. Next, the Senate is allowed to receive gifts of less than $100, and the Congress is allowed to receive gifts of less than $50. Please give them to your Congress people to wear. Before, it would be nice if they had them on the day of the march.
I love that.
Solidarity with us. So send them to them too.
Yeah, that's great. That's good to know about the gift limit because I wasn't sure. I remember when Hillary was running, I went to a phone bank at one of the places in Brooklyn, and I had found a 4-leaf clover in my yard. And so I pressed it and I put it in a tiny frame that I happened to have at home. I didn't even buy anything. And I took it to the campaign office to give to her, and they couldn't accept it. They were like, I was like, but it didn't cost me anything. And they were like, it doesn't matter. We can't accept gifts. I'm sorry. And so I was just gutted. I was like, oh, but I have this 4-leaf clover. So to this day, I'm like, that's what happened.
She didn't get the clover.
She didn't get the clover.
It's all your fault.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Donna. All right.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to say that kind of sharing is wonderful, that we're able to help each other know more, learn more, sending to your Congress people. That is amazing. I love it.
I love it.
All right. I didn't see any other questions in the chat, Kesley.
Okay,
Do we,
sorry. Yep.
I think we're close to time. If we
Yeah.
want to do, I don't have my house to put on their hat, and we do our picture.
Yep. And can I just do my wrap up slides real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Absolutely.
you're fine. You're fine. Let me just share these and we will get these wrapped up. So your next 3 steps are to RSVP for the October 29th meeting. And I think, Kim, we may have another surprise attendee from the Women's March to give us our last minute details. Support the Women's March. If you haven't already RSVP'd, please RSVP so they have a head count. You know, it's a gamble. They never really know how many people are going to be there, but the more of us that can RSVP, the better. And then donate your hats for Harris. Also on the Women's March page, so you can share this page out, they have on their wewon'tgoback.com. They have lots of creative ideas and things you can do to support the Women's March, and they included a little section for our iconic hat and links to Joy's tutorial videos, which Joy has made an immense amount of YouTube videos. So if you know somebody who wants to get into knitting or crochet or wants to be involved and they're like, well, I want to make a hat, please direct them to Joy's YouTube channel. She's got lots of patriotic hats there that can be converted into different styles of hats. Like I love on the Women's March page, the LGBTQ hat, the Women's March hat with the green and white. Like there's so many different ways that you can incorporate this hat design. If you make a white hat, then you can add buttons or pins to it or Joy's pom-poms. I love it. And then keep sending your hats in. I think as long as they're in the mail by October 23rd, they'll make them for the Women's March. But if you're knitting, think we're going to be there on Inauguration Day or the day, whenever the Women's March is there after the election, we will be there again. And I think we're just going to keep collecting our hats and keep going. So it doesn't end November 2nd. And that's all I have, Joy. So if you want to take us home.
All righty. I'm going to put us back to gallery view, and I'm hoping everybody will turn on their cameras. And if you have a hat, if you have whatever, even if you got it partially made, put on your hat and feel free to turn on your camera, and we'll do a screenshot of everybody, all of our smiling faces with our hats on. All of you have been so supportive. It's so much fun to do this. All right, Kesley, you tell us when you're ready. Everybody looks so good. I love it.
Oh my gosh, these look great.
All right, you got it, Kez? Oh, Jenny, that is a fabulous one. Jenny's so creative. You guys are all amazing. Okay, I think, thank you very much, Kim, for joining us tonight. We really, truly appreciate you being here. We appreciate you taking time out of your day, your Saturday, to join us and talk about the Women's March and the importance of what everybody's doing, how we are connected. Creating these inroads is really important to us. And as Kim started with the opening of this meeting, it's really about doing something. So we thank everybody for doing something and participating and contributing to the overall objective of what we're all trying to do. So thank you all very much, and we hope everybody has a great evening. Remember to post and keep us informed on what you're doing. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Kim.